Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Math with Dr. War. We are here with another video, and we're still in the standard Q2B, but we're going to be looking at square roots of perfect squares. In this standard, you can't use a calculator, so put your calculator away. Now, in a previous video, we talked about perfect squares. So you saw me squaring whole numbers, and we also squared decimals. Now here we're going to be finding the square root. Now the square root is what we call the inverse relationship, or what I usually tell my students is you're doing the opposite. So notice here 1 squared is 1, and if you take the square root of 1, you get 1. 2 squared, so let's go over at the side here. 2 squared means, okay, 2 times 2, which gives me 4. Now, suppose I want to do the inverse, meaning I want to find the square root. Notice I'm using the same word square, but this time I'm adding the word root onto it. Suppose I want to find the square root of 4. You ask yourself, well, what number multiplies itself twice, because it's a square too, to give you 4? And the only number that multiplies itself twice to give you 4 is 2. So the square root of 4 is 2. 3 squared is 9. Now, if I take the square root of 9, my answer would be 3. What number multiplies itself to give you 9? Your answer is 3. You should memorize your perfect squares all the way to 12. I included 13 and 15 and 20. You should have these to memory. Like when someone says, oh, what is 8 squared? You should be ready on the fly to say 8 squared is 64. Which means when someone says, what's the square root of 64? Then you should be able to think the answer is 8. Now, on the GED test, they're going to ask you to find square roots. Well, we're going to start with perfect squares because I don't want you running and screaming yet. We're going to start with perfect squares so they can give you whole numbers, they can give you fractions, and they can give you decimals. I'm going to get rid of our little table right here because you should have memorized. If you have not, that's your homework. Know your perfect squares, but I am going to remove my little table from here. So let's get that gone. Let's move this up. All right, let's find the square roots. So let's start with the first one. So the square root of 81, you ask yourself, okay, what number multiplies itself to give you 81? And that number is 9. So 9 times 9 is 81. Therefore, the square root of 81 is 9. You only want one of them. That's all you need. That's all you need. Only one of them. The square root of 81 is 9. Suppose we want 196. Now, I know that 12 squared, so I know 12 squared is 144, and I know 13 squared is 169. Now, we all know 15 squared is 225, so I know from memory that the square root of 196 means that what number multiplies itself to give me 196? Well, that is 14 times 14. Because notice 196 is between 169 and 225. So my answer is 14. Or you can go on the side if you don't know and multiply the numbers. I'm telling you, if you go down here, 14 times 14, 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times 1 is 4 plus 1 is 5. 1 times 4 is 4 and 1, 6, 9, 1. Yep, 196. So I'll just get rid of that. Taking up space, I don't have enough space. Okay, here we want the square root of 49. That is simple. Square root of 49 is 7. We want the square root of 225. What number multiplies? Oops, I have it right here for you to see. 15. The square root of 121. You should be telling me that is 11. And the square root of 16. What number multiplies itself to give you 16? Is 4. Now, if you're given fractions, please don't freak out. You're going to break them up, numerator and denominator. So when they say find the square root of 9 over 100, all they mean is you're going to take the square root of 9 and you're going to take the square root of 100, okay? You're just breaking them up and you're going to do them individually. The square root of 9, what number multiplies itself to give you 9? 3. The square root of 100, what number multiplies by itself to give you 100 is 10. So the square root of 9 over 100 is 3 over 10. Same thing here. What is the square root of 25 over 196? Now, the square root of 25 is 5. That's your numerator. And your denominator, we just did this before, the square root of 196 is 14. Same thing here. You want the square root of 49 over 81. 49 is 7. Square root of 81 is 9. Again, they use the same square roots over and over and over. If you put them to memory, you can finish this question in less than half of a minute. Now, when they give you decimals, some people go crazy. They're like, oh my God, a decimal. Don't freak out with the decimals, okay? So here I want the square root of 1.69. Okay, I'm going to forget that this is a decimal. I'm going to think, oh, this is 169. So I'm going to say to myself, okay, what number multiplies itself to give me 169? Well, guess what it is? It's 13. Now, again, this is a decimal, 1.69. Now, how many digits are after the decimal point? You have 2 digits, okay? So you have 2 decimal places after. So remember, when you're taking the square root of your perfect squares, you're multiplying 2 numbers, which means one number has to have 1 decimal place. You get where I'm going? And the other number has to have 1 decimal place. Because to get 169, you need 13 times 13, right? And if the total is 2 decimal places, we're going to even Steven here. Even Steven. This has to have 1 decimal place, 1.3, and this has to have 1 decimal place, 1.3, which means the square root of 1.69 is 1.3. Let's do that again. I'm on the GED test and they want me to find the square root of 0.04. I'm going to blank out of my mind, traumatize those decimals. All I see is 4. So I'm like, okay, what's the square root of 4? Square root of 4 is 2. Okay? 2. Because we know it's going to be 2 times 2. Now, how many decimal places this has? It has 2 decimal places, which means even Steven, this is going to have 1 decimal place. So this is going to be 0.2 and then this is going to be 0.2. Which means when you take the square root, because 0.2 times 0.2 is 0.04, your answer is 0.2. Okay, let's try this again. I want the square root of 0.64. So I'm just going to focus on the 64. That is going to be 8. But my answer has to be a decimal because my square root they're asking me for is a decimal. I have 2 decimal places, even Stevens, 1 decimal place. So my answer would be 0.8 or 0.8. Let's try this again. So I'm going to make up a decimal. Well, not really make up a decimal, but you know where I'm going with. So suppose you have 0.0225. So suppose I want to find the square root of 0.0225. So when I look at this number, I know that this here is a perfect square because I've memorized my perfect squares. 225 is 15, right? 15 times 15 is 225. So now I'm looking at how many decimals are after. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 of them. So I'm like, okay, even Steven, what's half of 4? 2. So this number has to have 2 decimal places. So my answer would be 0.15. I hope this lesson has been helpful. I don't think you're going to get anything with 4 decimal places, but if you do, you know what your answer will be. When they ask you to compute with square roots, they're going to, as my lesson started off with, we are looking at the perfect squares. Okay? So you have to put to memory your perfect squares and also know your square roots. This will be very helpful and will help in speeding up your computation. So notice here, it was pretty easy for me to find the square root of 81 because I knew my perfect squares. The decimals are not that difficult. Just remember, focus on the number, forget their decimals. Once it's a perfect square, you know what your answer will be. Look for the number of decimal places and half that, and then insert the decimal into your whole number. I hope this lesson has been helpful. If you like the content, please hit like and subscribe. If you know someone who's taking their GED exam in mathematics, please share the channel. If you have any comments or questions, please drop them down below. And as always, good luck in your GED examination.